What happens when a company realizes they can't replace you? In high school, I attended a technical school to study auto mechanics. Since I was a kid, I dreamed of becoming a mechanic. After graduation, I went straight to work in a repair shop. The work itself didn't bother me, but I disliked the shop environment. One day I realized the best part of my job was taking cars for test drives. That made me think that becoming a truck driver might be the perfect career for me. So I started working toward that goal. And soon after my 20th birthday, I got my first truck driving job. I loved being on the open road. At that time, Pennsylvania used the Class 1, 2, and 3 license system. Class 1 was for 18-wheelers, Class 2 for large trucks over 30,000 pounds, and Class 3 for passenger vehicles. My company owned 2 delivery trucks, and I was their second driver. Everything was going well until things changed. About 3.5 years later, Pennsylvania switched to the federal commercial driver's license system. Instead of 1, 2, and 3, the new classes were A, B, and C. Class A was for 18-wheelers, Class B for trucks over 27,000 pounds, and Class C for passenger vehicles. Class 3 and Class C vehicles needed only a regular license, but anything heavier required extra testing. To get a CDL, you needed a permit, a truck to practice with, and a licensed CDL driver to supervise you. Then you had to pass a driving test and a written test. My problem was simple. I didn't know anyone with a CDL, and no one was willing to lend me a truck. My only other option was truck driving school, which I couldn't afford while living on my own at 20. Our company's trucks had been rated Class 3 because they didn't have air brakes and weighed 28,000 pounds. The company liked this because they could hire cheaper drivers, but under the new rules, those trucks required a Class B CDL. The main people involved were me, a 20-year-old driver, John, my manager, and Fred, one of the company's part owners. John and I got along well. I had a great working relationship with almost everyone, except Fred. Since the first day he joined the company, he seemed to dislike me without any real reason. Pennsylvania gave drivers 3 months to get their CDL. One day, John asked if I planned to get mine. I asked if the company would pay for it. He said he wasn't sure and would talk to Fred. A month passed with no answer. Then Fred asked me the same question. I repeated mine. Are you paying for it? When he said no, I said no as well. A month later, he asked what I planned to do for work if I didn't get the CDL. I looked right at him and said, this isn't the only job. What Fred didn't realize was that in just over 2 weeks, the company would have no legal driver. They would either have to pay someone else a lot more money or agree to my request. 2 weeks before the deadline, John told me, on Saturday, take the company pickup to Harrisburg and get your permit. You'll be paid for your time. Luckily, I had learned earlier that if I had driven the same truck for 3 years, I could get a waiver that allowed me to skip the driving test. All I needed was an affidavit signed by the owner. I didn't tell Fred. Instead, I went to the other owner and got him to sign it. On Saturday, I left at 4 a.m. and arrived at the DMV to find the line wrapped around the block. Even so, after waiting for hours, I walked out with my permit. Next came the written tests. Pennsylvania had temporary testing sites at firehouses because the demand was so high. I tried 3 locations but couldn't get in. My office finally called around and reserved a spot for me. On Thursday afternoon, I had 1 hour to reach a testing site that was an hour and a half away. I drove fast, probably a little too fast, and made it just as they were closing the doors. To get a CDL, you must pass the general truck test and the air brake test, along with optional endorsement tests. These include tanker, school bus, passenger bus, double or triple trailers, and more. I planned to take 2 tests. I took all of them except hazmat. I was the last person to sit down, but the first to finish. Someone even whispered, he must have failed. The computer graded each test instantly. I passed everyone, with my lowest score being an 87. That Saturday, I drove back to Harrisburg to get my actual license. I left at 3 a.m., and even then, I was around 300th in line. By the time I walked out with my CDL, the line had grown to over 2,500 people. In those 2 weeks, I earned about 25 hours of overtime, got my CDL, and even received a raise. I left the company a year later, but continued driving trucks for 11 more years before becoming a diesel technician. Having a CDL helped me throughout my career, often putting me at the front of the line for jobs and raises. In some shops, I was even the only technician legally allowed to test drive trucks.